The first thing I noticed was the quiet, and not the good kind of quiet, like a peaceful Sunday morning with coffee and rain against the window. This was the bad kind. The kind where 150 people hold their breath at the same time, and the only sound is the rustle of tulle against my ankles and the faint drip of condensation from the flower arrangements. I stood at the altar in a rented wedding dress with a smudged hem, and my fiancé of 5 years was looking at me like I was a stain on his expensive white suit. I can't do this, Suwan.
His voice wried.
It bounced off the stained glass windows and ricocheted off the pews. My mother, sitting in the front row, went pale. Her knuckles turned white against the wooden railing. She'd been through enough in the past 3 years, losing my father, drowning in his debts, selling off every heirloom we owned just to keep the lights on. She didn't need this. Not today, did I open my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat felt like sandpaper. Jiang Mingyuan stepped closer. He was handsome. I'd always known that. Sha RP jaw, Wa eyes that had once looked at me like I was the only woman in the world. But those eyes were cold now, flat and cutting, and the mouth that had whispered, "I love you," just yesterday was twisted into something cruel. "You think I didn't notice," he said, and his voice was getting louder. The guests in the back rows were craning their necks.
Phones were coming out.
I could see the little red recording dots blinking from 3 different angles. "You think I didn't notice that you came into this mariage with nothing, Suwan?" "Please," I finally managed. My voice cracked. "Please what?" He laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Please ma ryu anyway, please pretend that your little editor salary and your dead father's debts don't exist. My father was right about you from day one. You're a leech, Suwan. You latched onto me because you knew I was your only ticket out of that crumbling appartement and that pathetic life of yours." Somewhere behind me, my maid of honor, Zhou Xiaoming, made a strangled sound. I knew she was about to launch herself at him. I couldn't let her do that. Not here. Not like this, Jiang Mingyuan. I forced his full name out. It tasted bitter. "We've been together for 5 years. You proposed. You bought the ring. You stood in this very church 3 months ago and promised me you wanted to spend the rest of your life with me. So which part of that was a lie?" "All of it." He said it without blinking. "I was being nice. I felt sorry for you. But do you know what my family said to me last night at the rehearsal dinner? They said, 'Mingyuan, if you rry this girl, you're throwing your future away.' And you know what? They were right. You're broke. Your mother is sick. Your father left you nothing except a stack of unpaid bills. What exactly are you bringing to my table?" Sue won a pretty face and a good sob story. My mother stood up. I saw her out of the corner of my eye, her thin frame trembling in her best dress, the only nice dress she still owned, bought 3 years ago for my father's funeral. She opened her mouth to say something, but I shook my head. "Just be a rely."
She saw it.
She sat back down. But she was crying. Silent tears tracking down her hollow cheeks. I turned back to the man I was supposed to rry. "So that's it, you're dumping me at the altar because I'm not rich enough for your family?" "Dumping you," he laughed again.
"Suvan, I am saving you.
I'm doing you a favor. If I ride you, you drag me down with you. At least this way you can find some other sucker to pay for your mother's medical bills." He pulled a ring off his finger and tossed it onto the floor. It bounced once, twice, then rolled under the communion rail. No one moved to pick it up. "We're done," he announced to the congregation. "The wedding is canceled. The reception is off. Please, everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekend. My apologies for the inconvenience." And then he turned around, and Sta Root walking down the aisle. Lin Qian followed him. His cousin. The one who'd always been around, always smiling too sweetly, always touching his arm a second too long. She picked up my bridal bouquet from where I'd set it on the altar and ride it with her like it was a trophy. Her heels clicked against the marbly floor, sharp and clean and victorious. I watched them walk away. I watched the church doors swing open, let in a blinding slice of autumn sunlight, and then close again. Silence. Then the murmuring Sta Root. Whispers. Excited, cruel, pitying whispers that cut into me like little blades. I heard someone say, I always knew she wasn't good enough for him. I heard someone else say, poor thing, standing there like a fool. A third voice lower. Her mother must be mortified.
I didn't turn around.
I couldn't let Zhou Xiaoming reach me first. Her arms wrapped around me so tight, I could barely breathe. That son of a bitch, she hissed into my ear, that absolute son of a bitch. I'll kill him. I'll find him, and I'll. Don't, I said. My voice was steady.
I didn't know how.
I felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching myself from above. Don't make a scene. It's over. Let them go. But Suwan, it's over, I repeated. And this time, I almost believed it. I bent down and picked up the bouquet that Lin Qian had abandoned on a chair the front pew. White roses and baby's breath, the same flowers I'd spent 3 months choosing, because I wanted everything to be perfect. I ride them to the trash can by the side door and dropped them in. They landed with a soft thud. Then I walked back to my mother. She was shaking. Her hands, her lips, her entire frail body trembled like a leaf in a storm. I knelt in front of her and took her cold fingers in mine. Mom, I said quietly, we're leaving. Your father's debts, she root. Your father's debts and my surgery and everything we owe, I'll handle it. But how you have 3,000 yuan in your bank account? You have rent next week. You have, Mom. I squeezed her hands. I'll handle it. Okay, just trust me. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded.
Slowly.
Reluctantly. But she nodded. I helped her stand up.
She was so light now.
Too light. The hospital was supposed to schedule her surgery next week. 8,000 yuan for the procedure. Jiang Mingyuan had promised to pay for it. That was part of why I'd agreed to the marriage in the first place. Not because I needed his money, but because my mother needed it, and I couldn't say no to anything that might keep her alive a little longer, and now that money was gone. And I had exactly 3,200 yuan in my checking account. But I didn't cry. Not in front of all these people. Not in front of my mother. I lifted my chin, took her arm, and walked down the aisle that I was supposed to walk down as a bride. Instead, I walked down it as a woman who had just been publicly humiliated, tossed aside, and labeled as the poor girl who wasn't good enough. But I didn't look back. I didn't want to see the faces. I didn't want to see the pity, the smugness, the concealed amusement. I just wanted to get my mother home that we changed in the church restroom. I peeled off the rented gown and stuffed it into its garment bag. It was stained now. The deposit was gone. I didn't see I pulled on my old jeans and a faded t-shirt, the same ones I'd worn to run errands yesterday. My mother changed into her regular clothes, the ones that had holes in the cuffs and patches on the elbows. We took a taxi home. The driver kept glancing at us in the REA review mirror, probably wondering why a woman in her 60s was crying and her daughter had a streak of wedding makeup red across her cheek. Neither of us explained. The apartment was small. 2 bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, a living room that doubled as my mother's recovery space when she was too weak to climb the stairs. The paint was peeling in the corners. The couch had a broken spring that poked you in the back if you sat in the wrong spot. The windows were old and drafty, and the heat never worked quite right in the winter. But it was ours. Every broken, desperate inch of it was ours. I closed the door behind us. I helped my mother sit down on the couch. I went to the kitchen and poured her a glass of water. I handed it to her, and she took it with trembling fingers. Suwan, she said. Your father, Dad left us nothing, I said gently. I know.
You don't have to say it.
He never meant to, she whispered. He was a good man. He made mistakes. Business mistakes. He thought he could fix them. He thought he could. I know, Mom. I know. She root crying again. I sat down beside her and wrapped my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me, her body shuddering with each sob. What are we going to do? She asked. The surgery, if I don't get it, you'll get it, I said. I'll find a way. Maybe I should just let it go. It's expensive and I'm old and don't finish that sentence. My voice came out harder than I meant it to. She flinched. I softened. Please, Mom. Just let me figure it out. You focus on getting strong. Let me handle the money. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. Why would she for 3 hours? I'd been scraping by on an editor's salary, paying off debt collectors, buying the cheapest food, wearing clothes from discount racks. I'd never given her any reason to think I could suddenly pull 8,000 yuan out of thin air, but there was one thing she didn't know about. One secret I'd kept, even from her, my grandfather. Her father. The man who'd built a construction empire from nothing, and then sold it all before he died. Most of the money went to charity. That's what the family always said. But he'd set aside something for me. A trust fund. He told me about it when I was 18, right before he passed away. Don't tell your mother, he'd said, his voice raspy and weak. She'll worry. She'll try to spend it on your father's debts. Just let it sit. Wait until you're 25. Then it's yours. I was 24 years and 11 months old. The trust fund matured in 30 days. 30 days of scraping by, of pinching pennies, of figuring out how to keep my mother alive until that money hit my account. 30 days of wondering if I could borrow from friends, from banks, from anyone who might have a shred of sympathy left. I didn't know how much was in it. My grandfather had always been vague. Enough, he'd said. Enough to give you a fresh RT if you need one. I needed one now, after my mother fell asleep. Exhausted, broken, her body too weak to stay awake any longer, I retreated to my bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the edge of my narrow bed and read at my phone for a long time, and no messages from Jiang Mingyuan. Of course not. He'd made his point. He'd publicly humiliated me, called me broke, and walked out with his perfect cousin on his arm. He wasn't going to check in on me. He wasn't going to apologize. I opened WeChat, scrolled through my contacts, stopped on Zhou Xiaoming's name. She'd texted me an hour ago. I'm going to find him and punch him in the face. This isn't a joke, Su Wan. Tell me where he lives. I typed back. Leave it. Not worth your energy. She replied immediately. You are worth my energy. You're worth every ounce of rage I have. He's trash.
Absolute garbage.
I hate him. I smiled. It was a small smile, rely there, but it was real. I know. Go to sleep. I'll call you tomorrow. She sent a string of angry emojis, but she didn't push further. I set my phone down and lay back on my bed. The ceiling had a water stain in the corner, brown and spreading. I'd been meaning to fix it for months, but there was never enough money for a roofer. Soon, I told myself. Soon there would be enough that I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. But all I could see was Jiang Mingyuan's face, cold and disdainful, and the way Lin Qian had smiled as she picked up my bouquet. I'd make it through this. I had to. Tomorrow was Monday. I had a job to go to, a mother to take care of, and a trust fund that was exactly 1 month away from changing everything that I just had to survive 30 more days. And then, maybe I'd finally get to show them all exactly how wrong they were. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and a leaky faucet that I'd forgotten to fix over the weekend. I woke up at 6, made my mother a simple breakfast of congee and pickled vegetables, and checked my bank balance on the way to the bathroom.
3,200 yuan.
Rent was due in 5 days. The hospital wanted a deposit before they'd even schedule the surgery date. I brushed my teeth and read at my reflection. DARK circles under my eyes. A pale complexion. The same face that Jiang Mingyuan had called pretty 3 hours ago, back when he was still trying to impress me. Now that face apparently wasn't enough. Neither was my job, my loyalty, or the 5 hours I'd given him. Did I spat out the toothpaste and rinse my mouth? No time to dwell. The bus didn't wait for broken RTS. The magazine office was in an old commercial building in the city center. 7 floors of cramped cubicles and flickering fluorescent lights. I worked on the editorial floor, running the relationship advice column. Readers sent in their problems, cheating husbands, distant boyfriends, broken engagements, and I wrote back with gentle suggestions and therapeutic platitudes. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was giving advice about love while my own engagement was a smoldering pile of wreckage. My boss, Sister Lu, was waiting for me when I walked through the door. She was a stout woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense haircut and a surprisingly soft TRT. She'd hired me fresh out of university, given me raises when I didn't ask for them, and let me leave EARLY on the days my mother had doctor's appointments. Shenzhen. She pulled me into her office the moment I stepped in. I heroed. About the wedding. Everyone HRD, I said. There were phones. Lots of them. Sister Lu winced. I'm so sorry. That man is a piece of work, Sister Lu. I interrupted gently. I'd rather not talk about it. I have a column to edit. She studied my face for a long moment. Then she nodded.
All right.
But if you need anything, time off, alone, a person to come with me, and King his CAR is tempting, but I'll pass. She laughed. It was a wah-arum, motherly sound. That's my girl.
Keep your chin up.
You're stronger than you know. I smiled and walked to my desk. The morning passed in a blur of reader emails and coffee refills. I answered 12 letters, edited 3 articles, and avoided looking at my phone every time it buzzed. Most of the notifications were from friends who'd HRD about the wedding disaster. I sent generic replies.
Fine.
Thank you for your concern. Yes, I'll be okay. Around noon, my mother called. Her voice was shaky. The hospital called Suwon. They said if we don't pay the deposit by Friday, they'll have to push the surgery back another month. My grip tightened on the phone. I'll figure it out. Maybe your aunt. She's in Shanghai, and she hasn't spoken to us in 2 years. No. Your cousin, then, or mom. I kept my voice gentle. I said I'll figure it out. Trust me. She was quiet for a moment. Then, very softly, she said, I love you, Suwon. I'm sorry I'm such a burden. You're not a burden, I said fiercely. Don't ever say that. I'll see you tonight. I hung up before she could hear the crack in my voice. I read at my computer screen for a long time. The cursor blinked mockingly at me. 8,000 yuan. I could ask Zhou Xiaoming, but she'd just changed jobs and was living on instant noodles herself. I could take out a loan, but without collateral, the banks would laugh at me. I could sell the APA it meant, but then where would my mother live? I didn't have options. Not good ones, anyway. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a friend. It was an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me swipe the screen open. The message was a single line of text. Miss Sue, your trust fund has completed all legal procedures as of 9 a.m. this morning. Principal and accumulated EA earnings total 86 million yuan. Please find the attached asset statement. Your account has been updated. I read at the screen. 86 million yuan. My first thought was that I was being scammed. My second thought was that someone was playing a cruel prank on me. My third thought was that maybe, just maybe, I should check my bank app. I opened it with trembling fingers. My balance showed a number that I had to count the zeros on 3 sepe rate times just to believe it. 86 million yuan. My grandfather had left me a fortune. He hadn't been exaggerating. He hadn't been making promises he couldn't keep. He'd quietly invested everything he had, grown it over the years, and set the entire thing aside for me. And he'd made sure I wouldn't have access until I was 25, probably because he knew my family would have drained it dry long before I reached adulthood. I sat at my desk with my HRT hammering in my chest. My hands were shaking. My vision was blurry. I had to set my phone down and take 3 deep breaths before I could look at it again. 86 million yuan, and I could pay for my mother's surgery 100 times over. I could pay off every debt my father had left behind. I could buy a new APA meant, a new CAR, a new life. I could walk away from everything and never look back, but I didn't want to walk away. I'd spent too many years walking away from arguments, from confrontations, from the quiet humiliations of being the poor girl who didn't fit in. I was done walking. I was going to stand my ground. Sister Lu poked her head out of her office. Shenzhen, we're getting a guest later. Some writer doing a profile on the magazine. You okay? You look pale. I'm fine, I said. Just good news. Really good news. From who? From my grandfather, I said, and I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd felt all week. Long story. I'll tell you later. She shrugged and went back to her office. I spent the next hour in a haze. I paid the hospital deposit online with a single click. I transferred enough money to cover the rest of my mother's treatment. I paid my rent for the next 6 months. And then I sat back and waited because the rush of numbers on my screen didn't feel real yet. It felt like watching a movie where someone else was the main char actor. But it was real. And it was mine that I was still processing when the front door of the office swung open and the guest arrived. She was beautiful. Tall, slender, dressed in a custom-made blue dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Her hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her heels lethal and elegant. She moved into the room like she owned it, followed by 2 assistants carrying gift bags and looking important. It took me a second to recognize her. Then the recognition hit like a slap. Lin Xian, Zhang Mingyuan's cousin. The same woman who had picked up my wedding bouquet, who had walked out of the church with him on her arm, who had smiled like she'd won a prize and I'd lost everything. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on me with deliberate focus. Then she smiled. It was the kind of smile that made your teeth ache. "Su Wan," she said, and her voice was sweet enough to coat a cake. "I've been looking for you." I stood up from my desk. "Lin Xian, what are you doing here? Delivering something?" She waved a hand at her assistants. They set the gift bags down on the NEA rest desk. "Mingyuan asked me to bring your things. You left some personal items in the church's storage room. He thought you might want them back." I looked at the bags. They were cheap, synthetic things, stuffed with a few old sweaters and a pair of worn-out sneakers. Nothing I couldn't replace. "Anything else?" I asked. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a folded piece of paper.
A check.
She laid it on the gift bag, face up, so I could see the amount. 50,000 yuan. "Mingyuan wanted you to have this," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. He felt bad about Saturday.
He said it could help.
You know, with your mother's medical bills and your rent and, well, everything. The office had gone very quiet. Everyone was watching. I looked down at the check. Then I looked up at Lin Xian's perfectly painted face. "Take it back," I said. She blinked. "Excuse me, I don't want his money. I don't need his money. Take the check and leave." Lin Xian's smile flickered. "Su Wan, don't be proud. We all know your situation. Your mother is sick.
Jó raport ment is fulinga pa RT.
You work a dead-end job that rely pays minimum wage. 50,000 yuan is a lot for someone like you. Someone like me. Someone who doesn't have anything," she said, and now the sweetness was gone. "Someone who couldn't even keep a man at the altar. Someone who's been scraping by her whole life and will probably keep scraping until she dies. Take the money, Su Wan. It's the best offer you're going to get." I walked around my desk. I picked up the check. I looked at it, at the neat handwriting that had obviously been written by Zhang Mingyuan himself, and then I tore it in half. "Things I don't need," I said, my voice calm and steady. "Include your pity and his guilt money. Things I don't want to include either of you, anywhere NEA, are my life. So you can take your check, you can take your bags, and you can walk out of this office and never come back." Lin Xian's face flushed red. "How to you? How to I laughed. "You walked into my place of work. You publicly humiliated me. You threw a check in my face like I was some charity case. And now you're asking me, how to I know, Lin Xian. How to you?" She was speechless. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. "I mean it," I said. "Pick up your things and go. And if you or Zhang Mingyuan ever show up here again, I'll file a restraining order. I can afford one now." She read at me. Her assistants shuffled nervously behind her. The silence stretched out like a taut wire. Then someone laughed. It was a low, wah-rm sound, coming from the doorway behind Lin Xian. Everyone turned to look. A man stood there, leaning against the doorframe like he had all the time in the world. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean build. Dark gray blazer over a black t-shirt. Short hair, RP features, and a small SCA running through his left eyebrow. He held a paper cup of coffee in one hand and looked like he'd been watching the show for a while. "Lin Xian," he said, and his voice was deep and slightly raspy, like gravel wrapped in silk. "Your mother's been looking for you. Something about a blind date she set up. But I guess you're busy being a bully today." Lin Qian's face went from red to white. Song Yenji, what are you doing here? I'm visiting a friend, he said casually. He lifted his chin in my direction. And maybe picking her up from work. My heart stopped. Who is this man? I'd never seen him before in my life. But Lin Qian Clea, RLY knew him. And she looked terrified. You know her, she stammered, pointing at me. Know her, the man smiled. It was a slow, dangerous smile.
Yeah.
She's my girlfriend. The word hit the room like a bomb that I opened my mouth to object, to say that this was a mistake, that I'd never met him before, that. But he was already walking Tawa Ardimi. Long strides. Confident. Relaxed. He stopped right in front of my desk, close enough that I could smell the clean scent of cedar on his jacket, and he looked down at me with those deep brown eyes. Sorry I'm late, he said. Traffic was terrible. He reached out and took my hand.
His fingers were steady.
He gave my palm a gentle squeeze, and suddenly I understood he was helping me. For reasons I didn't yet know, he was stepping in and giving Lin Qian a reason to leave, a reason to stop humiliating me, to stop treating me like I was beneath her. I squeezed his hand back. Just once. Just enough to tell him I understood. Don't worry about it, I said, and I smiled up at him like we'd been together for years. I was just about to finish up anyway. Lin Qian sputtered. Song Yenji. Do you have any idea who she is? She's my cousin's ex-fiancé. The one he dumped because she was what? He cut her off, his voice still pleasant but with an edge RP enough to cut glass. Because she wasn't rich enough, because she wasn't good enough for your precious family. That says a lot about your family, Lin Qian. And nothing at all about her. The check was Ming Yuan's money. For her mother's medical bills. She tore it up. I know, he said calmly.
I saw.
And I thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd seen all week. A woman with dignity. What a concept. Lin Qian looked like she was about to explode. He ignored her completely. He turned to me, his thumb stroking the back of my hand absently. You ready to go? I made reservations at that place you like. I didn't know what place he was talking about. I didn't even know if he was talking about a real reservation. But I nodded like I did. Let me grab my bag, I said. Take your time. Lin Qian finally snapped.
Fine.
Keep the money.
Keep the bags.
Keep your new little girlfriend, Song Yenji. But don't come crying to me when she turns out to be just as worthless as my cousin said she was. She spun on her heel and marched Tawa RD the door. Her assistants scurried after her. Just before she read into the hallway, Song Yenji called out. One more thing, Lin Qian, she stopped. Didn't turn around. If I ever see you or your cousin NEA or Suwon again, he said, his voice dropping to something soft and lethal, I won't be polite about it. Consider this your only warning. She stormed out without a backway RD glance. The door swung shut. The office was silent again. Then Sister Lu spoke up from her office doorway. Well, that was interesting. I turned to look at the stranger who was still holding my hand. Thank you, I said quietly. I don't know who you are, but thank you. He smiled, and it softened his whole face.
I'm Song Yenji, he said.
And we have a lot to talk about. We ended up at a milk tea shop downstairs from my office building. It was cramped and noisy, the kind of place where teenagers crowded around sticky tables and argued about K-pop bands. But it was private enough that nobody from the magazine could eavesdrop, and the milk tea was cheap. I ordered a taro milk tea with boba. He got a plain black coffee. You don't like sweet drinks? I asked, settling into the plastic chair across from him. I like them fine, he said. I just don't trust the suga, our content in places like this. My sister once got a bubble tea here, and she was bouncing off the walls for 3 hours. I almost laughed. Almost. The tension was still too fresh in my chest. You should know, I said, wrapping my hands around my cup. I've never met you before in my life. I have no idea why you helped me back there. But thank you. Really. You didn't have to do that. Song Yenji leaned back in his chair. The movement pulled his jacket open slightly, revealing the black t-shirt underneath. Simple. Expensive. He was the kind of man who didn't need to show off his wealth because it was already obvious in the way he ride himself. Confident. Relaxed. Like nothing in the world could rattle him. I know we haven't met, he said. But I know who you are. Or rather, I know who you were supposed to marry. My stomach twisted. Jiang Mingyuan. Your ex-fiancé. He said it without judgment. I was at the church on Saturday. I felt the blood drain from my face. You were there, I was in the neighborhood, he said. I was looking for an editor named Qin Lu. She did a profile on my sister a few months back. I took a wrong turn and ended up walking past the church right when everything went down. I read at him. You saw the whole thing, he nodded. I saw you standing at the altar in your wedding dress. I saw him throw his ring on the floor. I saw you pick up your bouquet and throw it in the trash.
He paused.
I also saw you help your mother out of the church. You held her arm like she was made of glass, and you didn't cry once. Not in front of anyone. My throat tightened. What was I supposed to do, break down in the middle of the aisle, give them a show? No, he said, and there was something in his voice that I couldn't quite name. Respect, maybe. Admiration. I thought it was impressive. Most people would have fallen apart.
You didn't.
I looked down at my milk tea. The ice was already melting, diluting the taro flavor. I fell apart later. At home. Alone. That counts too, he said quietly.
Fulin ko po erte loud.
The important thing is that you got back up again. I didn't know what to say to that. So I said nothing. He took a sip of his coffee and changed the subject. I'm not in the habit of pretending to be someone's boyfriend in public. But when I saw Lin Qian walk in, you know her father and my father do business together, he said.
We've met at a few events.
She's unpleasant. Entitled. The kind of person who thinks money gives her the right to treat everyone else like dirt. That's a pretty accurate description, I muttered. And your ex-fiancé.
Jiang Mingyuan.
I don't know him well, but I know his family's restaurant chain. They've been struggling for a while. Cutting corners. Losing customers. He shrugged. He probably thought Ma Ryan would stabilize things, then change his mind when someone else offered him a better deal. Better deal. Lin Qian's family is rich, he said. Richer than his. If he Ma Ryan into her side, he'd get access to their connections, their money, their business network. You were just a placeholder until he found something better. It stung. Even after everything, it still stung that I took a long sip of my milk tea and let the suga coat my tongue. So, you were just being a good sama, saw a girl getting bullied, and decided to play knight in shining armor, he laughed. It was a wah-rm sound, low and genuine. I didn't plan it. I came to the office to see Qin Lu, and I walked in on that scene. Lin Qian was being a monster. You were holding your ground. I figured you could use a hand. I had it handled. I know, he said. That's why I helped.
You didn't need me.
You just needed backup. Something about that hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent so many years being the one who took care of everything. My mother's health, my father's debts, my own survival. I'd never had backup. I'd never had someone step in and say, let me handle this part. It felt strange. It felt good. I should probably apologize, I said after a moment, for getting you involved. Lin Qian's not going to forget this. She'll tell her father, and her father will tell your father, and... My father can handle it, Song Yanji interrupted. So can I, don't worry about me. But we rely know each other. He smiled. It was a crooked smile, slightly lopsided, and it transformed his whole face. We're getting to know each other now. That's what this is, isn't it? A conversation. Two strangers talking over milk tea. I couldn't help it. I smiled back that we talked for another hour. He told me about his sister, who was an artist and had been interviewed by Qin Lu for an article on emerging female painters. He told me about his job. He ran a small venture capital firm, investing in startups and tech companies. He told me about his father, who was a workaholic and drove everyone around him crazy. In return, I told him about my mother, about my father's debts and how they'd eaten through everything we owned, about the magazine and Sister Lu, and the column I wrote every week. I didn't mention the trust fund. That felt too big, too unreal, like something out of a dream. When I finally looked at my phone, it was almost 7 in the evening. I'd completely forgotten about the time. I should go, I said, standing up. My mother's waiting. She gets anxious if I'm late. He stood too. Where do you live? I'll drive you. You don't have to, Suwon. He said my name like he'd known me for years. It's RK. It's raining. And I'm already here. Let me drive you. I looked out the window. He was right. A steady drizzle had sta route, painting the streets in slick black and silver. I hadn't brought an umbrella, okay? I said. Thank you. The car was a black SUV, clean and neat. I got into the passenger seat and buckled my seatbelt while he slid into the driver's side. The interior smelled like cedar and something else, something clean and faintly citrusy. Directions he asked, and I gave him the address. He programmed it into his GPS and pulled out of the parking lot. We drove in comfortable silence. The rain pattered against the roof, and the streetlights cast orange pools onto the wet asphalt. I watched the city blur past and felt, for the first time in days, something like peace. Can I ask you something? He said eventually. Sure. What happened to your father? I tensed. It wasn't a question I liked answering, but something about the way he asked, quiet, refill, without pity, made me want to answer. He was a good man, I said. He was kind. He loved my mother. He loved me. But he made bad business decisions. He borrowed money from the wrong people. He kept thinking he could fix things, and he kept making them worse. When he died, he left us with a mountain of debt. Song Yenji nodded slowly. And you've been paying it off ever since. Paying it off, working 3 jobs, taking care of my mom, doing whatever it took to keep us afloat. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Jang Minuan knew all of that. He knew how hard I was struggling. He promised he would help. He promised he would take care of us. He lied. He lied, I agreed. But that's on him. Not on me. He glanced at me briefly. You really believe that I have to? I said. If I start believing that I deserved this, that I was too poor or too broken or too stupid, then I'll never be able to move 4-way road. And I need to move 4-way road. My mother needs me to move 4-way road. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, softly, you're stronger than you think you are, Suwon. I didn't reply, but I felt something loosen in my chest as we reached my apartment building. It was old and shabby, the kind of building that had seen better decades and never recovered. I felt a flush of embarrassment as he pulled up to the curb. You don't have to walk me up, I said quickly. I can manage. I know, he said. But I want to. He got out and opened my door. I grabbed my bag and stepped out into the rain. He didn't have an umbrella either, and his jacket quickly spotted with the RK droplets. He didn't seem to mind that we walked up the 3 flights of stairs to my door. The hallway was dimly lit, with peeling paint and the faint smell of king oil from the neighboring apartments. I fumbled with my keys. This is me, I said. He nodded. Get some rest tonight. And if Lin Qian or Jiang Mingyuan bother you again, I'll handle it. I said. You'll handle it, he repeated, and there was a smile in his voice. I don't doubt that. But if you need backup, you know where to find me. He pulled a business card out of his pocket and handed it to me. Simple design. His name, his phone number, and the name of his firm to call me, he said. Anytime. I took the road. Thank you, Song Yenji, for everything. Call me Yenji, he said. And you're welcome. He turned and walked back down the stairs. I watched him go, tall and unhurried, until he disappeared around the corner. Then I unlocked my door and stepped inside. Then my mother was asleep on the couch, the television still flickering with some evening drama. I turned it off and covered her with a blanket. She stirred but didn't wake. I went to my room and sat on my bed. The business card was still in my hand. I looked at the number, memorized it, and tucked it into my wallet. Then I opened my bank app again. 86 million yuan still there. Still reeled. Tomorrow, I'd start making plans. Tomorrow, I'd talk to the hospital about the surgery. Tomorrow, I'd figure out what to do with the rest of the money. But tonight, I just wanted to sit in the quiet and breathe. I thought about Song Yenji, the way he'd stepped in without hesitation. The way he'd called me strong. The way he'd smiled, crooked and wa'aram, like he actually enjoyed being around me. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know why he'd helped me, or what he wanted, or if I'd ever see him again. But for the first time since Saturday morning, I felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. That I fell asleep with the light still on, and a small smile on my face. The hospital called the next morning at 7. My mother's surgery had been scheduled for Thursday. The deposit had Clea read, the surgeon was available, and everything was ready to go. I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to the nurse's cheerful voice on the other end of the line. The sun was rising outside my window, pale and watery through the old glass. I felt like I was floating, like none of this was real. Thursday at 9 in the morning, the nurse repeated. Please arrive 2 hours EARLY for pre-op. Your mother will need to fast after midnight.
Thank you, I said.
We'll be there. I hung up and sat there for a long moment. My mother was still asleep in the next room. I could hear her soft breathing through the thin walls. In 3 days, she would go under the knife, and in 3 days, she would come out on the other side. Hopefully healthier. Hopefully stronger. I got up and made breakfast. Congee, with a soft-boiled egg. The good kind of pickled vegetables, the ones that cost a little more but tasted like home. I set the table and went to wake my mother. She was already awake. She was sitting up in bed, her hands folded in her lap, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Soo-won, she said, and her voice was trembling. The hospital called me too. They said you paid the deposit. All of it. Where did you get that kind of money? I sat down on the edge of her bed. Remember Grandpa? She blinked. Your grandfather, the one who died when you were 18, he left me something, I said. A trust fund. He set it up years ago, before he passed. He told me to wait until I was 25 before I touched it. I didn't know how much was in there. I didn't even know if it was still growing. But it matured yesterday. How much? She asked. I hesitated. Then I told her that. Her face went white, then pink, then a bright, mottled red. She opened her mouth and closed it again, like a fish gasping for air. 86 million, she finally whispered. 86 million. I confirmed. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Your father always said your grandfather was a generous man. He never told me, he never said, I think he wanted to protect it. I said gently. He knew what things were like. He knew Dad had trouble with money. He wanted to make sure I had something to fall back on, no matter what happened. My mother grabbed my hands and squeezed them hard. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone so frail. You can pay off the debts, she said. You can pay everything. You can START over. You can. We can START over, I corrected. That money isn't just for me. It's for both of us. She STA root, crying in earnest then. Big, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. I wrapped my arms around her and held her tight. She smelled like sleep and old perfume and the faint bitter tang of the medication she took every morning. I thought we were going to lose everything, she said into my shoulder. I thought I was going to die and leave you alone with nothing. You're not going to die, I said firmly. You're going to have surgery, you're going to recover, and you're going to live to see your grandchildren. That's the plan. She laughed through her tears. Grandchildren, you're not even married anymore. Give me time, I said, and I smiled. I work fast. She didn't ask about the engagement. She never did. I think she was just relieved I wasn't crying over it. That would have broken her more than anything else. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. I called the hospital to confirm the surgery details. I called a lawyer to START the process of paying off my father's remaining debts. I called Zhou Xiaoming and told her in broad strokes that everything was going to be okay. She demanded to come over that evening with wine and snacks. I told her to bring extra napkins because I was probably going to cry. You don't cry, she said flatly. You've never cried. I've known you for 7 years, and you've cried exactly twice. Once when your father died, and once when you dropped your phone in a toilet. 3rd time's the charm, I said. Just bring the wine.
She did.
She showed up at 7 with 2 bottles of cheap red, a bag of potato chips, and a suspicious amount of enthusiasm. So, she said, kicking off her shoes and flopping onto my couch. Tell me everything. Who is this mystery man from the office? Why did he pretend to be your boyfriend? Is he hot? Please tell me he's hot. I poured her a glass of wine. His name is Song Yenji. He was in the building to meet another editor. He saw Lin Qian trying to humiliate me and stepped in. Wait, Zhou Xiuming said, sitting up straight. Song Yenji, the venture capital guy whose sister is that painter. You know him. I've heard of him, she said, waving her hands. Everyone in the startup world has heard of him. He's a big deal. His family owns like half the commercial real estate in the city. He could buy and sell Jiang Mingyuan 100 times over. His family is rich, I said cautiously. I gathered that. Rich is an understatement. He's like royalty. And he pretended to be your boyfriend. She grabbed my arm, Su-wan. This is the best thing that's ever happened to you. It's not that big of a deal. He was just helping. Helping, she repeated skeptically. He didn't have to help. He could have walked away. But he didn't. He walked in, he told Lin Qian off, and he called you his girlfriend in front of everyone. That's not just helping. That's sending a message. What message? That you're not alone, she said. That someone's got your back. That he thinks you're worth defending. I picked at the label on my wine bottle. We rely know each other. So get to know him. He gave you his number, didn't he? How did you know that? Because that's what men like him do, she said, and she grinned. They give out their number like it's nothing. And then they wait. They wait to see if you'll call. They want you to call. I didn't call, not that night. Not the next day, either. I had too much to do. My mother's surgery was approaching, and I needed to get everything in order. I went to work, I answered my emails, I stayed late to finish a piece on relationship burnout. I came home, I cooked dinner, I helped my mother with her medications. I fell into bed exhausted every night and woke up exhausted every morning. But I thought about him. I couldn't help it. The way he looked at me in the milk tea shop. The way his voice had gone soft when he said, I was strong. The way he'd walked me to my door, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I didn't have time for this. I was rebuilding my life. I was taking care of my mother. I was still processing the fact that I was suddenly, inexplicably, ridiculously wealthy. I didn't need the complication of a handsome stranger who came with his own set of complications. But I kept his business card in my wallet, right next to my bank cards. Just in case. Thursday arrived faster than I expected. We got to the hospital at 7 in the morning. My mother was calm, calmer than me, at least. She wore a paper gown and held my hand while a nurse attached monitors to her chest. Su-wan, she said, squeezing my fingers. Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll find someone who loves you for you. Not for your money. Not for what you can do for them. But for you. The real you. I blinked back the sting of TRS. I promise. Good, she said, and she smiled. Now go get some coffee. I'll be out before you know it. They wheeled her into the operating room at 9 RP. I sat in the waiting room with a cold cup of coffee and a magazine I couldn't focus on. Zhou Xiaoming had offered to come, but I told her to stay at work. There was no point in both of us being miserable. The hours crawled by. I watched the clock. I checked my phone obsessively. I texted my mother's nurse twice, just to confirm that everything was going smoothly. At 11:30, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. I almost didn't answer. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me swipe the screen anyway. Hello, Su-wan. It was Song Yenji's voice, low and familiar. I hope I'm not interrupting. I sat up straighter.
No.
No, you're not interrupting. My mother's in surgery. I'm waiting. At the Central Hospital, yes. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I'm in the neighborhood. Can I come sit with you? My throat tightened. You don't have to do that. I know, he said. But I want to. Is that okay? I looked around the waiting room. Families huddled together, clutching bags and tissues. An elderly man dozed in the corner. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Okay, I said. He was there in 20 minutes. He walked into the waiting room, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a small paper bag. He sat down in the empty seat beside me and handed me one of the cups. Thought you might need a refill, he said. I took it. The warmth spread through my cold fingers. Thank you. You didn't have to come all the way here. I was in the neighborhood, he said again. And I remembered you mentioned your mother's surgery was this week. I figured you could use some company. How did you get my number? I asked. Sister Lou gave it to me, he said, and he looked almost sheepish. I told her it was urgent. She believed me. Of course she did. I shook my head, but I was smiling. You're ridiculous. I prefer persistent, he said. It sounds more professional. We sat in silence for a while. I drank my coffee and tried not to stare at him. He was wearing a simple gray sweater and arcade jeans. Casual. Understated. He still looked like he'd walked off the cover of a magazine. The paper bag, I said eventually. What's in it? He opened it and pulled out a small pastry. I wasn't sure if you'd eaten breakfast. You probably haven't, knowing the way you take care of everyone except yourself. I took the pastry. It was still warm. How do you know that? I'm observant, he said. And I've been paying attention. I broke off a piece of the pastry and put it in my mouth. It was buttery and sweet. It tasted like comfort. Thank you, I said quietly.
For everything.
For the pastry, for the coffee, for coming here. You don't owe me anything. He turned to look at me. The fluorescent lights softened the sharp lines of his face. I know I don't owe you anything, he said. But I want to be here. Isn't that enough? I didn't have an answer to that. So I just sat there, next to him, and ate my pastry and waited. At 1:30, the surgeon walked in. She was a small woman with tired eyes and a calm voice. Mrs. Sue's surgery was successful, she announced. She's in recovery now. We're going to keep her overnight for observation, but everything looks very good. I felt the breath leave my lungs in a rush. She's okay, the surgeon confirmed. She's a fighter. I root to cry. Not the quiet, controlled tears I'd held back all week. Ugly, messy, grateful crying. I buried my face in my hands and let it all out. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Warm steady. Song Yenji was there. He didn't say anything. He just held my shoulder and let me cry. When I finally looked up, he was smiling. It was a soft smile, almost tender. Told you, he said. She's a fighter. Just like her daughter. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. You really are observant. I told you, he said. I pay attention. My mother was still asleep when they let me see her. She looked small and fragile in the hospital bed, surrounded by beeping machines and tubes and wires. But she was breathing. Her heart was beating. She was alive. Song Yenji waited outside the room. I stood at my mother's bedside and held her hand and whispered that everything was going to be okay. Then I walked back out and found him leaning against the wall, scrolling through his phone. She's going to be fine, I said. They said I can bring her home in a couple of days.
That's good, he said.
That's really good.
Thank you, I said again.
For coming.
For staying.
For everything. He pocketed his phone and straightened up. You're welcome, Suwon. And for what it's worth, I meant what I said before. If you ever need anything, I'm a call away. I nodded. I know. Are you going to call? He asked. And there was something almost vulnerable in his voice that I smiled. It was the first real, easy smile I'd felt in a long time. Maybe I will, I said. We'll see. My mother came home from the hospital on a Sunday. The apartment felt different when she walked through the door. Brighter, somehow. The gray autumn light that always seemed to seep through the old windows looked almost golden as it fell across her face. She was still pale, still thin, but her eyes were clear and her grip on my arm was steady. I want to go to the market tomorrow, she announced as I helped her into the living room. I'm going to see you a proper meal. None of that takeout nonsense you've been surviving on. Mom, you just had surgery. And I'm fine, she said firmly. The doctor said I could resume normal activities as long as I don't lift anything heavy. I'm not lifting anything heavy. I'm just king. I opened my mouth to argue, but she gave me a look that stopped me cold. The same look she'd given me when I was 5 and refusing to eat my vegetables. The look that said, I love you, but I will win this argument.
Fine, I said.
But I'm CA buying the groceries.
She smiled, satisfied. Deal.
We spent the afternoon settling in. I fluffed her pillows and made her tea and adjusted the blanket over her knees. She complained that I was fussing too much. I ignored her and fussed anyway. Around 4 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and felt my heart do a little flip to Song Yenji that I'd texted him a few times over the past few days. Short messages. Updates about my mother's recovery. He always replied quickly, with RMTH and a gentle humor that made me smile even when I was exhausted. But he hadn't called. Until now. Are you going to answer that? My mother asked, arching an eyebrow that I realized I'd been ring at the screen. It's just a friend. It's not just a friend. You're blushing. I am not blushing. You're blushing so hard, I can see it from across the room. She waved her hand at me. Answer the phone. Don't be rude. I stepped into the kitchen and swiped the screen. Hello, Suwan. His voice was RM and familiar. How's your mother? She's home, I said. She's already bossing me around again. I think that's a good sign.
He laughed.
The sound sent a pleasant flutter through my chest. Definitely a good sign. Listen, I was wondering if you wanted to get dinner tonight. Nothing fancy. Just someplace quiet. I hesitated. My mother was home, but she was stable. She didn't need me hovering every second. I'd like that. I said. He picked me up at 7. I'd changed 3 times before settling on a simple black dress and a CA cardigan. Casual. Comfortable. Nothing that looked like I'd tried too hard. My mother watched me from the couch as I put on my shoes. He's handsome, he's fine, I said vaguely. Do you just turn the color of a tomato? She said. I'll take that as a yes. I kissed her forehead and told her to call me if she needed anything. Then I walked downstairs and stepped out into the Seoul evening air. Song Yenji was leaning against a CAR, waiting. He wore a RK blue jacket over a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The streetlights cast soft shadows across his face. He smiled when he saw me. You look nice. You clean up okay yourself. He opened the passenger door for me. I slid in and tried to ignore the way my pulse was racing. We went to a small hot pot restaurant in a quiet part of town. The kind of place that didn't have a sign out front, just a wooden door, and a RM glow spilling from the windows. The interior was intimate, with low lighting and cozy booths. I discovered this place a few months ago, he said as we settled into our seats. The owner's a retired chef from Sichuan. Everything's made from scratch. So you're a foodie, I said. I'm a person who likes good food, he corrected. There's a difference. Foodies insufferable. I just know what I like. I laughed. That's a very diplomatic way of saying it. We ordered. The broth arrived in a bubbling pot, fragrant with chili and anise. Platters of meat and vegetables and mushrooms came out on wooden trays. He showed me how to cook the beef until it was just tender, how to dip the vegetables in the right sauces. I didn't expect this, I said, ring a piece of tofu. When I met you, I thought you'd be the kind of person who ate at 5 our restaurants every night. That's a stereotype, he said, and he was smiling. I do eat at nice places sometimes. Work dinners, family events, that kind of thing. But my favorite meals usually the simple ones. This. Street food. A bowl of noodles on a rainy day. I thought about that. About the person he was showing me. Not the wealthy scion of a powerful family, but someone who appreciated small pleasures. Tell me something about yourself, I said. Something you don't usually tell people. He considered this. I wanted to be a musician when I was younger. Piano. I practiced for hours every day. My parents thought it was a phase, but I was serious. I almost went to conservatory. Almost, he shrugged. Reality set in. My father needed me to take over the business. My sister was already going to be an artist. Someone had to be the practical one. Do you regret it? He was quiet for a moment. Sometimes, he admitted. I still play. I have a piano in my apartment. But it's not the same as making it your life. That dream died a long time ago. I heard the weight in his voice. The soft resignation. I knew that feeling. The dream that slipped through your fingers because life demanded something else. I'm sorry. I said, don't be. I made a choice. It was the right one for my family. For me, too, even if I didn't see it at the time. He smiled, and the melancholy faded from his eyes. What about you? What did you dream about when you were younger? I thought about it. I wanted to be a writer, not a columnist, a novelist. I wanted to write stories that made people feel things. But then my father died, and I had to get a job that paid the bills. The magazine was the closest thing I could find. Still writing. I write my column, I said. That's something. It's not the same, but it's still words on a page. Still connecting with people. That matters, he said. You're still doing what you love, even if it's not exactly how you imagined it. I looked at him across the bubbling pot. The steam rose between us, soft and fragrant. Thank you, I said. For listening. For asking. Most people don't ask. Most people don't see, he said.
Ido.
Something shifted between us. I felt it. The air grew warmer, the space between us smaller. He reached for his water glass, and his fingers brushed mine. A brief, accidental touch that sent electricity up my arm. Neither of us pulled away after dinner. We walked along the riverbank. The city lights reflected off the water in ripples of gold and silver. The breeze ride the scent of autumn leaves and distant rain. I should probably get you home, he said. Your mother might worry. She has my location, I said. She knows I'm safe. He glanced at me. Does she know you're with me? I told her I was going to dinner with a friend. Just a friend. I stopped walking. He stopped too. We stood facing each other on the riverbank, the water glittering behind him. What are we doing? I asked. The question came out before I could stop it. I know you. We've known each other for a week. But it feels like more than a week. He finished. Yeah. He stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell the cedar and citrus scent that clung to his clothes. Close enough that I could see the tiny lines at the corners of his eyes, the ones that crinkled when he smiled. I don't know what this is, he said, his voice low. But I know I don't want it to stop. I know I like being around you. I know I've spent more time thinking about you in the past week than I've spent thinking about anyone in yours. You've spent time thinking about me, every day, he said. Multiple times a day. It's honestly a little embarrassing. I laughed. It was a shaky laugh, nervous and hopeful all at once. That's not embarrassing. It's nice. It's really nice. He reached out and took my hand. His palm was warm against mine, his fingers strong and steady. I'm not going to make any grand declarations, he said. We're still getting to know each other. But I want you to know that I'm interested. I'm interested in you, Suwon. Not the money. Not the circumstances. You. I couldn't breathe. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could feel it through my hand. I'm interested too, I said. I'm interested in you. He smiled. That crooked, lopsided smile that I was rooting to become dangerously fond of. Good, he said. That's good. We walked back to the car, hand in hand. The city lights blurred around us, but I really noticed. All I could focus on was the warmth of his fingers intertwined with mine, the steady rhythm of his footsteps matching my own. He drove me home. He walked me to my door, the same one he'd walked me to a week ago, on the night we'd met. Everything had changed since then. Everything felt different. Call me tomorrow, he said. Text me. Whatever works. I will. He hesitated. Then he leaned in and pressed a kiss to my forehead. It was soft and brief and gentle, and my entire body flooded with warmth. Good night, Suwon. Good night, Yenji. I went inside and leaned against the closed door, my hand pressed to my forehead where his lips had touched. I could still feel the faint tingle of it. My mother was asleep. The apartment was quiet. I walked to my room in a daze and collapsed on my bed, SDA rang at the ceiling with a smile I couldn't wipe off my face. My phone buzzed. A text from him. Made it home safe. Sleep well. I typed back. You too. Then I added, I had a really good time tonight. His reply came seconds later. Me too. Let's do it again soon. I fell asleep with my phone in my hand and the ghost of a smile on my lips.